So Eric Tars is a senior policy director with National Homelessness Law Center in Washington, D.C. You're joining us from Philadelphia, Eric. So the Supreme Court is at some point going to consider the legality of these laws that can forbid the homeless from staying, from camping in certain areas. What are the legal arguments here?
I mean, the question in this case is simple. Can cities that fail to meet everybody's basic needs for housing or even emergency shelter punish people with no choice but to sleep outside for using things like blankets or pillows? This is the most important Supreme Court case on homelessness in 40 years. And basically, the question is it cruel and unusual punishment under our Eighth Amendment in our Constitution to force people to make this impossible choice? Right now in Grants Pass, Oregon, where this case originates, there's a winter storm warning. There's below freezing temperatures, snow falling, high winds. But the second that people wrap a blanket around themselves to protect themselves from the elements, that could be committing a crime. And so it's what we're saying is that it's cruel and unusual to force people to make that choice, whether to protect themselves from the elements or have to go to jail.
Just intuitively, what's a little hard to understand here is that, homelessness, I think we can all agree, is not usually a choice. People don't choose to be homeless. In fact, Rob reminded us in his report, more than 500,000 people in the U.S. were homeless at one point in time last year, which is the highest number for that in 20 years. So what can be the legal argument for then also criminalizing something that people haven't chosen?
That's exactly the point. There's no penological purpose here. There's no reason that punishing people for experiencing homelessness makes sense when we know that the causes of homelessness are actually the lack of affordable housing. Right now, there's a study that came out just a month ago that showed that more than half of Americans are paying more than they can afford in rent every month. In Grants Pass, that figure is the same. More than half of the renters there are paying more than they can afford. That means they're just one missed paycheck, one broken down car, one medical emergency away from homelessness. And if once they're evicted, they go out on the streets, they put a blanket over themselves to keep themselves warm, that could be a crime. That makes no sense. Tickets and fines and fees and arrests aren't going to solve homelessness. Housing will.
Yeah, and by the way, for context, because I've reported on this in the U.S., and I think many of our viewers may not imagine this, how close how many Americans are to being homeless. All it can take is you get fired from your job, then you lose your home, or you contract a grave disease, and then you get fired from your job, and then you lose your home, and then you're homeless. And there just isn't much of a safety net. So this really happens, and it happens often and in many places. My question to you is, what are cities going to be able to argue before the Supreme Court then? The cities who want to implement these laws?
Well, they're making a couple of arguments. One is that the Constitution doesn't even apply here. What we're saying is that the Constitution is really a very low bar, not just saying that you can't punish people when there's nowhere else for them to go. It doesn't make sense. The only reason you want to overturn this case is if you want to continue to be able to use the very ineffective tool of criminalizing homelessness without even bothering to make sure that there's somewhere else where people can be. But they're gonna try to make that argument. Okay, that the Constitution somehow doesn't apply. Yeah.
Okay, well, you also raised the very interesting question. Beyond the legality of it is the effectiveness of it. That's something we'll have a chance to discuss another time, though. Eric Tars, Senior Policy Director with the National Homelessness Law Center. Thank you so much.
Thank you.